recent weeks, the northern Tigray region of Ethiopia has been embroiled in a bloody conflict between government forces and fighters of the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the TPLF. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said his government had every right to deploy state forces in Tigray to quell the rebellion.
The federal government had every right to deploy federal security forces and use force in order to apprehend those implicated in massive corruption and gross human rights violation.
Hello, I'm Mubarak Kenya, and welcome to this week's edition of Africa Today, which is focusing on the deadly conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region. We are asking our experts, why did the Addis Ababa government launch a military operation in this region? And are foreign actors and entities, including the Israeli regime, involved in the Tigray conflict? Join us till the end.
Conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, dominated coalition ruled Ethiopia for 27 years. Launched as a rebel group in the 1970s, the TPLF led a movement that came to power in 1991 after overthrowing the government of Mengistu Haile Mariam. It established a governing coalition that was dominated by ethnic Tigrayans for decades. However, TPLF was forced to give up the reins of power in 2018 due to popular protests over economic and political mismanagement. Abiy Ahmed took office after the mass anti-government protests. Since then, TPLF leaders have complained of marginalization.
In September, the TPLF, which was the ruling party in Tigray regional state, defied a national ban on elections due to COVID-19. Abiy Ahmed responded by calling the vote in Tigray illegal. Tensions escalated into an armed conflict after the TPLF attacked a federal military base of the Northern Command. The Prime Minister launched a military operation to end what he termed as impunity.
In order to ensure that a culture of impunity will not become the norm, we have continued to exert great effort to identify and apprehend those who have been involved in corrupt transactions and those that need to be held accountable for their crimes will soon be brought to justice. Overall, our concerted effort to ensure that rule of law will prevail in the Tigray region also focuses on recent crimes committed against the National Defense Force, the Republic, as well as the constitutional order.
The leader of the TPLF, Debretsion Gebremichael, appeared defiant and blamed the government for using force to solve political differences.
They have decided to go to war, and we should all prepare for it. There is no reason for this. This is the action of a self-loving government that is trying to resolve political differences through force, weapons, and war.
Government forces engaged TPLF forces and eventually took over the regional capital, Mekelle, after 3 weeks of fierce fighting. The head of the Ethiopian military appeared on the country's national TV to declare victory over the rebels.
Our army, after having prepared yesterday on how to control Mekelle city without incurring collateral damage on the civilian population of Mekelle, have now fully taken control of Mekelle city as of this afternoon. Our army is hunting and going after and searching for the anti-peace elements that are hiding in the holes and pits.
Now, for an incisive analysis on the Tigray conflict, we are joined by Samuel Getachew, a journalist with the Reporter newspaper in Addis Ababa. We also have Bekel Teklu, a member of the Ethiopian Revolutionary Party. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Let's start off with Mr. Getachew. Now, can you elaborate on why Ethiopia's Prime Minister decided to launch a military offensive against Tigray?
Thank you for inviting me. The first thing is the government believes it was provoked into getting into this conflict when the TPLF, which they have admitted, they attacked a military base in Mekelle, which they also killed a few soldiers. So that's what provoked the whole conflict to begin. But it has been brewing for a while, and this was expected to come because of even the words that were being exchanged between Addis Ababa and Mekelle were getting heated, and it was expected. So what provoked it is, while it's the attack on the army base, it's also holding an election when it was told it was against the constitution. When the government in Addis Ababa tried to prolong the election, they decided to hold an election. These are among many, many reasons why the war began between the Ethiopian government and the former TPLF government in Mekelle.
Samuel Getachew there, Ethiopian journalist.
The military conflict triggered an influx of tens of thousands of refugees to neighboring Sudan. The TPLF has vowed to continue fighting, and therefore the influx of refugees is expected to continue. The United Nations Refugee Agency says Sudan needs $150 million in aid to cope with the flood of Ethiopian refugees.
They tell us we want to wait and see how the situation develops in Tigray in order to make a decision. Concern is legitimate, so we will continue to be with them here. We're stepping up the operation. At the beginning, emergencies are always a little bit slow, but I think it's stepping up quite quickly. And if we get the resources that I'm calling for, $150 million for the humanitarian community and the government for the next 6 months, we'll be able to have a well-organized response here. But we do hope that the situation improves in their country so they can go back.
The conflict in Tigray comes amid Ethiopia's tensions with neighboring Sudan and Egypt over Ethiopia's construction of Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile. The dam construction triggered a protracted diplomatic battle with Egypt that had enjoyed thousands of years of hydro-hegemony on the Nile.
The military forces are shooting at us. There are a lot of wounded people. There are a lot of people here suffering from malaria, which cannot be... They cannot afford any medication. So the world must expose and must understand our problem.
During our phone conversation with Sudanese Prime Minister Abdel Hamdok last October, US President Donald Trump openly backed Egypt and said Egypt can actually blow up the Ethiopian dam.
It's a very dangerous situation because Egypt is not going to be able to live that way. And they'll end up blowing up the dam. And I said it, and I say it loud and clear. They'll blow up that dam, and they have to do something. So whatever you can do to get them, Ethiopia, to do that, they're going to have to, okay? And we've cut off all payment and everything else to Ethiopia. It was terrible.
Ethiopia denounced what it termed as belligerent threats by President Trump. Now, is there a possibility that the rebellion in Tigray is backed by other foreign powers to punish the Ethiopian government over its insistence on the construction of the Grand Renaissance Dam?
The government, the Ethiopian government, has kept on saying that there is no middle ground, there is no outside power helping them. The TPLF insists. That's why it's losing the whole conflict. You have to consider how fast the army went in to really get into Mekelle with very small fights in between. It took it about 3 weeks to get into Mekelle or the suburbs of Mekelle. The government is saying it's doing it by itself. TPLF is saying it's not getting any support. So I like to take them at their words and believe whatever they're saying. The bigger accusations of Israel getting involved or UAE or Eritrea, it's something we have to verify in the future.
Okay, now let's bring in our other guest, Mr. Bekele Teklu of the Ethiopian Revolutionary Party. Now, do you think the Israeli regime is provoking the Tigray conflict, considering the fact that the region is home of Ethiopian Jews, commonly known as falashas, including many that have migrated to the occupied territories in Palestine?
At the moment, I don't think there are falashas in Tigray. What I know is before the TPLF came into power, there are some falashas which TPLF sold to Israelis. They got a lot of money and they were instrumental for those falashas to go to Israel. At the moment, most of the falashas are from Gondar.
Now, apart from collaborating with the Israeli regime, when the TPLF government was in power in Ethiopia for nearly 3 decades, it also received billions of dollars in assistance from Western countries, especially the US, and this resulted in regional instability. Now, this is the opinion of a Kenyan politician and political analyst. Let's take a listen.
You have to understand that Ethiopia was the biggest recipient of American aid and Western aid. Over $3 billion every year used to flow into the coffers of the TPLF, and nobody used to hold them accountable for anything. So the whole region had been scourged. The whole region had been scorched. So this is the moment now for the region to come back and reclaim its own potential.
Mr. Farah Maalim also believes that during its days in power, the TPLF government was supporting the Al-Shabaab Takfiri terrorist group in neighboring Somalia.
Let me tell you one thing. Al-Shabaab and TPLF have been working together. I have been told authoritatively by a very senior Somali officer one time that he himself saw it, how it was easy to get some of those things from the Ethiopian military bases those days, those 30 days. I don't think this has happened now for a while because a lot of the command structure has changed.
Now, still with you, Mr. Teklu, do you think the crisis in Tigray has been triggered by other foreign powers to weaken the Ethiopian government, one of Africa's most powerful and populous countries?
Most of the countries are not that much interested in Ethiopia to be living in harmony, stability, and prosperity. That is a historical fact. It's 1,000 years back. So always there are local tyrants who are instrumental for foreign powers. TPLF is one of them. So obviously, one of the TPLF leader, Siyum, he explicitly said, we can join with any foreign enemies in order to achieve our objective. He explicitly said this just 1 month, within the last 1 month or 2 months.
Thanks for that, Mr. Bekele, and stay tuned.
The TPLF and some other ethnically based parties accuse Abiy Ahmed of wanting to centralize control at the expense of Ethiopia's autonomous regions. Abiy is trying to hold together a patchwork of ethnic groups that make up Ethiopia's 115 million people. Ethnic animosity still runs deep in this Eastern African nation, as this victim of ethnic violence explains.
ቤት ሁሉ ተቃጥሏል የቤት ማተራል ማሳላ የነበረው ቡና አንሰት ተጨፍጭፏል ከብት ተዘርፏል ንብረት ሁሉ ያለ ተወድሞበታል ወደ ገጠር ሄደን ማሳ እንዳንሰራ ጠቄየው ነብን ያስፈሩብኝ ነው ለዛ ያስፈራሉና በቃ ማሳ እየሰራን አይደለም ያለ ነው ስለሚያስፈሩ ማለት ነው
Due to the situation in Ethiopia and the communication blackouts, the lack of access to the region, our colleagues have not been able to gather sufficient information to understand what's going on there. But we're focused here in Sudan on providing assistance to the people who have arrived here and who have crossed the border and who have sought refuge here. And that's why we're trying to scale up the operations and meet their most urgent needs.
Is there a possibility that the current conflict in Tigray might lead to the Balkanization of Ethiopia?
You know, many people, when we think of Ethiopia, when we hear even the word Yugoslavia or Rwanda, we get really, really nervous. Only because the genocide happened in Rwanda and the breakup of such a wonderful country that gave so many Africans a chance on education, and to see it break into pieces when EU is becoming one was a real concern to many of us watching it from a distance as young people. But we don't want Ethiopia to be that way. And, the TPLF leadership in Mekelle was openly debating, discussing about breaking the country. It was making nervous of many Ethiopians from all walks, only because we want Ethiopia to be united. It's not a rich country, it's a poor country. and dividing it into pieces with just, it would be a catch-22 with no end and too many problems. In a region that needs more unity and prosperous society to be, it needs to be united, I think, the country.
Efforts by African Union envoys to quell a civil conflict in Ethiopia have failed, with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed rejecting negotiations with the dissident TPLF. Ethiopia hosts the headquarters of the African Union. What role has this continental body played in stopping the Tigray conflict?
It has sent a delegation to speak to Abiy Ahmed, led by a lady who was the head of state, one of the few women heads of state in Liberia, a Nobel laureate like Abiy, to try to speak to him and have him come to an agreement that some kind of ceasefire or mediation is needed, and that a solution that's founded in the principles of an African is needed to bring some kind of solution. While he has rejected it for a reason that I believe is because, well, as he said, is because he's given TPLF plenty of chances. But that option was available to both actors, and it was because of the African Union that option was provided to them even at the last hours of the conflicts.
In Ethiopia's Tigray region.
Abiy Ahmed gained fame globally and won the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize for ending a two-decade standoff with neighboring Eritrea.
I wish to express our readiness to solve our differences not only for the sake of mutual benefit of our two countries, but also for the mutual benefit of our people who are tied with blood. And I would like to call on the Eritrean government to take a similar stand.
The Tigray region borders Eritrea. Now, how has the current conflict affected the peace bill between the two countries?
Many TPLF is saying that the conflict began with the help of Eritrea. Those are accusations, something we need to verify on later dates. As of now, it's just empty accusations going back and forth.
Thanks for that, Mr. Getachew. Now, when Abiy came to power in 2018, he speeded up democratic reforms, freeing prisoners, and banning political parties, and promising to hold the nation's first free and fair elections. However, opposition leaders believe the country is sliding back to dictatorship. A leading opposition activist and media mogul, Jawar Mohammed, speaks here before he was imprisoned.
He is resorting to the early signs of dictatorship, of trying to intimidate people, even with his very close allies, individuals who helped him come to power, who happen to disagree with some of the policies and positions, ideologies he's advocating. You know, intimidation is the start of authoritarian rule.
Now, how will the Tigray conflict impact on the much-touted Abiy's democratic reforms, which appear to be floundering?
Okay, with the democratic reform, I don't think so far we couldn't see any democratic reform. To be honest, Ethiopia has got a lot of problems. The ethnic-based governing system is the root cause of all these problems. There is unemployment, inflation, a lot of dissatisfaction, corruption, and so on.
Thanks for that, Mr. Bekele.
Ethiopia is the only African nation that was never fully colonized by Europeans. This country also has one of the most ancient civilizations in the world. Ethnic differences are now being used by external powers to divide the country.
It breaks my heart. It is a harrowing story. It devastates me beyond I can explain it, to see my country in this situation, and how fellow Ethiopians have brutally attacked other fellow brothers and sisters. So it's such an unimaginable tragedy.
What needs to be done to stop possible balkanization of Ethiopia and heal the gapping divisions across this country?
I think Ethiopia should move on and have an election, the most open election that we expected to have this year, which is postponed to next year, has to happen. We can't keep on postponing it year after year. And there has to be an adult conversation that needs to go on among Ethiopians. Are we becoming an arrogant nation where a few would be in control and the rest will be abused like before? Or are we going to have the kind of hope the Prime Minister gave many Ethiopians at the beginning of his term, including the protection of human rights, press freedom, and even inviting the opposition to come back home and compete in an election, the role of the diaspora. All this was discussed openly by Abiy Ahmed, and it gave many people, including myself, hope. But now I think Ethiopia has tilted to the back. It's like it's going back to the old era, and that shouldn't be. If we want a peace and prosperous nation, it needs to change, and the change should begin immediately before we also start another conflict in other parts. Whatever reason we might be given for it to start, I think a conversation would help it hold it back instead of just starting a conflict.
Ethiopia is a country with an ancient civilization, and masses should reject divisive colonial plots and instead use its ethnic diversity as a powerful tool for unity.
That's all we had in this week's edition of Africa Today, which focused on the ongoing conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Do let us know what you think of our show today by posting your comments on our social media handles appearing on your screen. Thank you for staying tuned, and we appreciate it. On behalf of all my colleagues, I would also like to thank you all for watching. Goodbye for now.